Welcome to your latest deep dive for GCSE English Lit Paper 2.
Yeah, and this time we're tackling Willy Russell's Blood Brothers. It's a really gripping play.
Totally. It's packed with, twists and some really powerful ideas. So let's just get straight to it.
Absolutely. Think of this as your sort of shortcut to really understanding what makes Blood Brothers tick. We'll map out the key moments in the plot.
The main story beats.
Exactly. And then we'll get our teeth into the big themes. Russell explores nature versus nurture.
Social class, always a big one in Russell.
Definitely. And superstition, fate, and that sort of ever-present threat of violence hanging in the air.
We'll even pull out some killer quotes to illustrate these points, make it stick.
Sounds like a plan.
Right. So at the heart of the play, we've got Mrs. Johnstone, working class, single mom.
And she finds out she's pregnant. Unexpectedly. With twins.
Which is a massive shock. And then there's Mrs. Lyons, her wealthy employer.
Desperate for a child herself. Yeah. So these two women, they're central.
But we can't forget the twins, obviously Mickey and Edward. And Linda, too. She's crucial.
Oh, yeah. Linda's vital. And the narrator, of course, hovering over everything.
So the play kicks off. Mrs. Johnstone's in a really tough spot financially.
Seriously struggling. And the news of twins just makes things, well, harder, doesn't it?
Meanwhile, Mrs. Lyons, she's got the money, the security.
Everything Mrs. Johnstone hasn't got, but she really, really wants a family. Her husband's away a lot, too.
Which sets up this real clash of needs right from the start.
And it's this clash, this desperation, that leads Mrs. Lyons to make a pretty dramatic proposition.
Seeing Mrs. Johnstone's situation, what does she suggest?
She suggests taking one of the babies, giving him, the life of privilege she can provide.
It's tempting, isn't it? Especially when Mrs. Johnstone's worried sick about feeding another 2 mouths.
It's a huge decision, massive consequences. And Russell really flags this up when Mrs. Lyons makes her swear on the Bible.
Oh yeah, that Bible scene is intense.
It's like this unbreakable, sacred pact. And that's when the narrator steps in with that really unsettling line.
Which one?
The devil's got your number, he's going to find you.
Ooh, yeah. Chilling. Instantly gives you that sense of dread.
Foreboding, exactly.
So the agreement's made. Then comes the split. Mickey stays with Mrs. Johnstone, working class life.
And Edward goes off with alliances. Middle-class upbringing. Totally different worlds from day one.
Their lives are just set on these completely different paths.
And what's really interesting and kind of chilling is how quickly Mrs. Lyons changes. That initial sort of gratitude, it turns into paranoia.
Right, she gets obsessed, doesn't she, about keeping Mrs. Johnstone away from Edward.
Totally. Ends up sacking her, even offers her money just to, disappear, stay away.
It shows how fragile that whole generous act really was. It was about her needs.
Definitely fear starts creeping in.
And here's where it gets even darker, really. Mrs. Lyons plants this idea, this superstition.
Yeah, the big one.
Tells Mrs. Johnstone that if separated twins ever find out they're twins,
they'll both die. Instantly.
It's completely made up.
Yeah.
A calculated move to control Mrs. Johnstone, playing on her own superstitious nature.
And the narrator jumps in again, doesn't he? Another warning. Really hammering home the danger.
It's like Russell is just setting up this tragic ending right from the start. You feel it coming.
Inevitability. That's the feeling.
But, despite all the adult secrets and lies, when the boys are 7...
They just bump into each other. Pure chance.
And they instantly click, become blood brothers.
Yeah.
No idea they're actual brothers.
It's brilliant, isn't it? That childhood innocence cutting right through the adult mess.
Totally. And despite their different backgrounds, different ways of talking even.
That bond is just there. Undeniable. But of course, Mrs. Lyons finds out and she freaks out.
Absolutely terrified. Forbids Edward from ever seeing Mickey again.
The kids will be kids, right? Especially 7-year-olds.
Edward just ignores her, keeps seeing Mickey.
And they even get into a bit of trouble with the police together.
Yeah, and notice how that's handled. It's quite telling.
How so?
Well, Edward's part in it, because of who his parents are, it's sort of brushed off. Polite warning.
Ah, right. Compared to how Mickey might be treated later. A little hint of the class difference already.
Exactly. Subtle, but it's there.
So Mrs. Lyons is desperate. What's her next move?
To really seal the separation, the Lyonses decide to pack up and move. Way to the countryside.
Another example of how their money, their class, lets them just escape. Change their circumstances.
Something the Johnstones could never dream of doing.
And during that goodbye visit, Mrs. Johnstone gives Edward something.
The locket.
Yeah, the locket. It seems like just a small keepsake at the time.
But it becomes this really powerful symbol later on, doesn't it? That physical link to his past.
The past Mrs. Lyons is trying so hard to bury.
Right, time jumps forward a bit. We see Edward, now a teenager, getting suspended.
From his posh private school, yeah. For being rude to a teacher, I think. About the locket, maybe.
Yeah, something about the locket, and Mrs. Lyons questions him about it. She's still suspicious.
And that's when the narrator pops up again with that killer line.
The past can never be ignored.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like this constant reminder, isn't it? You can run, but you can't hide from the truth. It's a ticking clock.
Mrs. Lyons' fear just keeps building. She even tries to bribe Mrs. Johnstone again, doesn't she? To stay away.
Yeah, her paranoia is just spiraling out of control by this point.
Then we get that little montage section. The 16-year-olds, Mickey, Linda, Edward.
Yeah, like a brief moment of sunshine. They're all mates, hanging out, happy.
Seems almost normal for a second. Oblivious, really, to the tragedy that's brewing.
It's that calm before the storm, isn't it? Because their lives are about to go in very different directions as they hit adulthood.
Massively different. Mickey leaves school.
Straight into a factory job, you know, typical paths for many working-class kids then.
While Edward, he's off to university. Completely different set of opportunities, all down to class.
Mickey and Linda get together, get married quite young.
Seems like things might be okay for them for a bit. But then the harsh realities hit.
Redundancy. Mickey loses his factory job.
And it hits him hard. Really affects his mental health, his pride.
That line, a sign of the times, it just anchors Mickey's personal tragedy in that wider economic slump, the hardship lots of working-class communities were facing.
Yeah, it's not just him. And feeling desperate, he gets pulled into something stupid.
The robbery with his older brother, Sammy.
Leads to his arrest. Prison. And that's where things get even worse.
The addiction. He gets hooked on pills, antidepressants, prescribed in prison. A really tragic spiral downwards.
So he gets out of prison, but he's not the same Mickey. Still battling the addiction, the depression.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And Linda, trying to help him, feels she has nowhere else to turn.
So she goes to Edward, who's now, what, a local counselor?
Yeah. Successful, respectable, the complete opposite of Mickey's situation. A symbol of that privilege.
And Linda seeking his help. That sets up the final act, doesn't it?
It really does. The affair that develops between Linda and Edward.
And then Mrs. Lyons finding out.
Yeah.
And what she does with that information.
Telling Mickey. It's just cruel.
Yeah.
Calculated. And it's the spark that ignites the final, devastating explosion. The climax of the whole tragedy.
Okay, heavy stuff. Let's unpack some of those big ideas Russell's exploring, starting with nature versus nurture.
Yeah, that classic debate. Are we born a certain way, nature? Or are we shaped more by our experiences, our upbringing, nurture?
The narrator kind of sets it up right at the start, describing the twins as
like each other as two new pins, suggesting they're fundamentally the same underneath.
But then as we watch them grow up in these totally different environments...
Russell uses them as almost like foil characters, don't you think? To show how powerfully nurture shapes them.
You see it so clearly when they first meet at 7, right?
Definitely. Mickey's language is rougher. He doesn't really get sharing sweets.
Well, Edward's more polite, articulate, just offers his sweets straight away.
It's a direct reflection of their homes, isn't it? Working class versus middle class upbringing.
Yet despite those differences, they form that instant bond, become blood brothers.
Which hints at maybe something innate, doesn't it? Some connection that cuts across the class divide.
And even as teenagers, you see similar sparks of rebellion in both of them.
Yeah, Mickey's attitude at his comprehensive school, Edward getting suspended from his private school over the locket. Maybe there's a shared core personality there.
But by the time they're adults, those different upbringings have created this massive gulf, a barrier between them.
Huge. Mickey feels really bitter about Edward's privilege. Feels cheated.
He says that line, if I was like him, I'd know all the right words.
Oh, yeah. That really shows his insecurity, doesn't it? Feeling inadequate because of his lack of education, his background.
And Edward, he means well, probably.
Yeah, but he's just too sheltered, too removed from Mickey's reality to really get it. He can't truly understand the struggles Mickey's faced.
So Russell seems to be showing just how powerful, how almost all-consuming environment and upbringing can be. Nurture seems to win out, in a way.
It seems that way. And Mrs. Lyons explicitly believes in nurture, doesn't she? She tells Edward.
What's the line? You learn filth from them and behave like this.
Like a horrible little boy, like them. But you are not like them.
Yeah. Desperately trying to reinforce that his upbringing makes him fundamentally different. Better, even.
Which leads us straight into social class, really. It's impossible to ignore in this play.
Absolutely. The contrast between the Johnstones' working class and Alliance's middle class, it's just stark right from the beginning.
We see Mrs. Johnstone constantly juggling bills, kids complaining about being hungry, debt collectors knocking.
Proper poverty. While Mr. Lyons can just casually hand over a wad of cash for the baby arrangement.
It throws that economic inequality into really sharp relief, doesn't it?
And this class difference dictates so much, opportunities especially.
Definitely. Mickey has to leave school, find manual work in a factory.
Edward gets university, a professional career as a counselor. Their paths are just set by the class they're raised in.
Even Mickey's slide into crime and addiction. You can link that back to the lack of opportunity, the economic hardship, that sign of the times.
It's presented as almost a consequence of his circumstances.
And think about how they're treated by authority figures, like the police.
We mentioned it earlier. Edward gets let off lightly as a kid. Mickey, later on, ends up in prison for the robbery. Different rules for different classes.
And Mrs. Lyons' ability to just move house when things get difficult.
Another privilege of wealth and class. The Johnstones are stuck.
There are some great lines that capture this class divide, too. Mickey looking at Edward's childhood.
Wishing he could kick a ball and climb a tree,
Yeah.
run around with dirty knees, that longing for a seemingly carefree life.
Yeah, seeing the grass is greener. And Edward, later, just completely clueless about money struggle, saying,
I got money, plenty of it.
such a simple line, but it speaks volumes about the gulf between their experiences.
Ugh.
He just doesn't get it.
Okay, theme 3. Superstition and fate. This runs all the way through, doesn't it? Often voiced by the narrator.
Yeah, the narrator acts a bit like a Greek chorus, doesn't he?
Mm.
Commenting, warning, referencing superstitions, making us question how much control the characters really have.
And the central superstition. The one about the twins dying.
Is completely invented by Mrs. Lyons. That's crucial. It's a lie she uses to manipulate Mrs. Johnstone.
Born out of her own fear and paranoia. But it takes on a life of its own.
And those warnings from the narrator, like after the Bible oath, the devil's got your number, he's going to find you. They just keep reinforcing this sense of impending doom, fate closing in.
We know Mrs. Johnstone is superstitious herself, which makes her vulnerable to Mrs. Lyons' lie.
Absolutely. And the terrible irony is that the superstition Mrs. Lyons makes up
Yeah.
comes true in the end.
But is it really superstition that causes the tragedy? Or is Russell pointing towards something else?
Exactly. He seems to be suggesting that while superstition plays a role in their minds, maybe the real driving force is social class and the inequalities it creates.
The narrator asks that question right at the end, doesn't he? It's so direct.
Yeah. Do we blame superstition for what came to pass? Or could it be what we, the English, have come to know as class?
Leaves it open, but strongly implies class is the bigger culprit.
Mrs. Johnstone certainly feels powerless, like she's caught up in something she can't control, like fate.
And those other superstition references the narrator makes.
There's shoes on the table and a joker in the pack. Someone broke the looking glass. Oh, those little omens.
They build this atmosphere, this feeling that something bad is bound to happen, an inescapable sense of doom.
Now, the devil's got your number. You know he's going to find you. It just echoes throughout.
Okay, final theme. Violence. How does that thread through the play?
Well, it starts quite subtly, doesn't it? Through the kids' games. Cowboys and Indians shooting each other with toy guns.
Right. And the narrator comments on that,
You
saying,
can get up off the ground again. It doesn't matter. The whole thing's just a game.
highlighting how it's pretend, harmless, no real consequences in childhood games.
But that contrasts so starkly with Mickey later on, when he's broken and desperate.
And he says, I'm gonna get a real gun soon.
Yeah. That shift from play violence to the intent for real violence is chilling. It marks how damaged he's become.
And it feels linked to his situation, doesn't it? The poverty, the lack of hope, driving him towards crime and violence.
Definitely. But it's not just Mickey. We see Mrs. Lyons turning to violence, too, when she feels powerless.
Threatening Mrs. Johnstone with a knife.
Yeah, that stage direction is terrifying. Mrs. Lyons has opened the knife drawer and has a lethal-looking knife in her hand. Proper visceral fear there.
And she slaps Edward as well, doesn't she? When she's losing control.
Her fear and desperation manifest as aggression, as violence.
And then ultimately, the play climaxes with that final, terrible act of violence that leads to the twins' deaths.
Looks the narrator has foreshadowed all along, hasn't he? With lines like,
Till the day they died, when a mother cried, my own dear sons lie slain.
it hangs over the whole play. That sense that violence is the inevitable, brutal endpoint of this story, shaped by secrets and inequality.
So, as you can hear, Blood Brothers is way more than just a straightforward story about twins who get separated.
Oh, much more. It's a really deep, powerful exploration of all the forces that shape our lives,
Our background, the society we live
the
in,
choices we make, or the choices that get made for us.
and maybe, just maybe, that hint of something else. Fate? Superstition? Something beyond our control.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What do you think is the biggest factor in Mickey and Edward's lives? Is it their nature?
Or does it nurture those completely different upbringings?
How much is down to social class, the system they're trapped in?
And what about superstition? Is it just a way they try to make sense of things, or does it actually influence what happens? How does Russell use it all to comment on British society back then? And maybe even now.
These are the big questions to keep chewing over as you revise Blood Brothers for your GCSEs.
Definitely. Hopefully this deep dive has given you a really solid starting point, a good foundation to dig even deeper into this absolutely compelling and, let's face it, pretty heartbreaking play.